Well, for more on migrants, I spoke to David Kitching. He's a political analyst and communications consultant and an advisor at Torc Think Tank. I asked him what role the immigration issue played in getting people to push for Brexit.
It was given a great deal of weight, even if you see the manner in which Nigel Farage changed his tactics towards the end of the campaign. And he went for quite an extreme version of his discourse on immigration, and very much dragged the whole landscape to the right in terms of that kind of discourse. And you'll even see in terms of how the Conservative Party handled it at the time. They were always looking over their right shoulder and triangulated around how best to cope with that particular framing of the debate from UKIP. So, for example, when Theresa May was the Home Secretary, she was the person behind the vans travelling around the UK telling migrants to go home. The discourse had already coarsened quite a bit, even in the years before the Brexit vote.
Now, as we know, the post-Brexit UK White Paper on Immigration is also expected to propose getting rid of EU migrants' preferential treatment when it comes to the UK's labour market. And it's also expected to hold all migrants to that $30,000 a year minimum salary threshold. What are the pros and cons that come with these changes?
There are very few pros, to be honest. If you look at the sectors most affected by the lowering of levels of immigration, especially from EU countries, they're construction, hospitality, and social care. So they're all sectors where entry level would be below that £30,000 threshold that the government is currently considering. Essentially, services will suffer, the economy will become more sluggish, and it would be very difficult to maintain the standard of living to which people have become accustomed.
So you mentioned that there was already a drop when it came to EU migration to the UK. So if we add on top of that this uncertain future with Brexit, what impact does that drop in migrants have on the British economy?
Well, yes. So the Brexit hasn't even happened yet, but people have been moving away from the UK primarily for three main reasons. There's been the drop in the value of the pound, so for those sending money back home, the lower value makes it less economically attractive. But there's also been an increase in xenophobic discourse and in hate crimes, and it feels like a less welcome place for many migrants. In terms of the long-term effects, once the actual legislative side of Brexit comes to bear, and once there are actual curbs on migration, we'll see a difficulty for employers in finding talent. We'll see a particular difficulty for academia, for example. British universities are some of the best in the world and have done very well out of Horizon 2020 funding from the European Commission. STEM research, so scientists won't be coming to the UK from other parts of the EU, and British innovation will suffer a great deal as an upshot of Brexit.
And just very quickly, we know that the UN recently had its Global Compact on refugees, and there's also the Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration, both recently adopted, both non-binding. What sort of impact, real-world impact, do you expect them to have?
Well, it is a sobering thought that 20 years after the inauguration of International Migrants' Day, that it's become such a hot political issue. And I happened to be in Brussels on the weekend, just after the new compact was introduced, and there were large protests around the Commission buildings, led by Vlaams Belang, the Flemish far-right party, in opposition to this compact. And we've seen again, mainstream Conservative parties have often been looking over their right shoulder for fear of what more far-right parties have been doing.
Right.
And often the main issue has been migration. In a sense, like you said, the compact is not binding, but several EU member states have already refused to sign it: Austria, Hungary, Italy, Poland and Slovakia, as well as the US outside of the EU. So it's more that it sends a signal to the population as to where the issue of migration is couched in political discourse and in overall social interaction in our societies.